Replit has just launched their latest agent update, which is promising 10 times longer autonomous coding, a new computer use model that lets it click around and test your apps for you, as well as a new interface for building agents and automation workflows. Naturally, in this video, I'll be putting it to the test. I'll be building a new app from scratch that's going to be using some AI gen and editing features on top of a canvas. So not just a simple to-do list app, I'll be getting the agent to test its own app and try and create some images for me using the actual app interface. And then, of course, the question you all are asking, I'll be reviewing the costs, the quality of the output, and just the general experience of building with Agent V3 versus the previous Agent V2. In this video, we're going to be building a web app, and we're going to use the new agent to test it in its own little browser, clicking around, inputting values into forms, and testing the app for us. So here's our prompt. The prompt is quite detailed because I've thought about building this app a few times. I already have the domain from several months ago. And basically it's going to be a YouTube thumbnail creator, which is going to use OpenAI's GPT Image 1 for image generation and editing. The key features are, I want it to be designed as a canvas style app, kind of like Canva, so that the user can generate an image, drag it around, add text, shapes, arrows, all of these things that are going to be useful for a YouTube thumbnail. Then above the canvas, I want a little prompt bar where they can generate new little elements. So if they want a Ferrari or they want a computer or a little robot or something that they want to drag and add into the page, then they should easily have a prompt bar that generates an image and adds it onto the canvas. We need the prompt bar to be able to handle editing images. So we need a way to upload images into the prompt bar and then switch the request to be an edit image request. Here I've pasted the API docs from OpenAI for GPT Image 1 create and edit images. And that's it. I'm going to select web app and then I'm going to choose a theme. So if I head over to this app themes manager, you can get a bit of a preview of what these different app themes look like. So let's go with this highlighter design. So I'm just going to select the theme. I'm going to select highlighter and then we're ready to hit start chat. If I see something here that I don't like, I can change the plan, but I'm actually happy with it, so I'm going to leave it. And this is new. So now I can see there's an option to build the entire app or just start with a design. So let's go with it and see what happens. So the build has started. I'll check in every now and then to see what it's doing. And just a quick update, we have 10 minutes of work so far, 95 actions, and $1.92. Okay, awesome. It has created this first version. Just a little update, another $1.68. I quite like this design that it's created with the app theme. Let's just start from scratch with a new project. So let's test it out. And there we go. We have our image on the canvas that has been generated from our prompt. When I click on the image, I can see there are some settings which are not quite set up to work yet, it seems. Okay, so you have to manually edit these things, which is not ideal. Time for a second round of updates from agents. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just screenshot this whole thing, drag it into the agent chat, and I'm just going to start listing all of the things that I've noticed that are not working and get it to go through all of them and test them for me. So, okay, we're ready for another round of testing. So let's start with a fresh project. The prompt bar has been cleaned up a little bit. I'm going to try one of these advanced options. Okay, so new thumbnail image has been generated. Nice. Now I can move it around the canvas a bit better. Let's try adding a text element. Hey, we have some text now. Can I edit this? Okay, so editing is something we're gonna have to work on. Shape. Cool, we have a shape. Looks like we only get a circle so far. So the resizing seems to be a bit laggy. So if I do this, it does resize it, but it seems to take a long time. Now let's try editing an existing image. Okay, we're editing the image. All right, there we go. So it has got the edit image functionality working properly, which is great. I feel like the next step for this would be to just list out a lot of these small changes and cleaning up the functionality of these different things. So agent has cleaned up a lot of the things that were bothering me. So text is now editing properly. We have different font options and these edit, the colors and things actually work. So some of the editing functionality is working properly. The resizing is actually responsive now. And I also added this feature which lets me drag an image into the prompt area like this. So I drag image here to upload, and that's going to make things way easier for editing and iterating on top of an image. So we have this, make the background orange. And there we go. So this is getting a lot better. Obviously, there's still a lot that I would want to actually fix and clean up about this app if I actually wanted to use it regularly. So we've now come to the stage where I think it's time to run a full app test. I've written the prompt for it here. I've given it some steps for the test. So create a new project, generate the YouTube thumbnail main background, using it with a person, use our app's brand colors. So hopefully it knows what that is from our app theme. Then I wanted to add some large text using the add text element and not just from the image. So I wanted to actually click on that and add some relevant text. Then I wanted to position it correctly on the canvas. And then I wanted to export this thumbnail that it creates using the button. I don't know how far it's going to get. I'm curious to see what happens, but let's set up the app testing with max autonomy and see if it can run through this full test of our new app. Oh, we have our test running. Let's just click in to take a look at what's going on. So it's created a new project. It's clicked in and it is writing the prompt that I gave. It's clicked to generate the image. Okay, so it has given a very excited person looking at their laptop, which is quite fitting. Now let's see if it can add the text. It's going to have a hard time editing the text because now there's text inside the image. So I'm curious what it's going to do here. Okay, it's clicking to add text. Let's see if it finds the text that has been added onto the thumbnail because it's quite hidden right now. Okay, it found the text element. It's clicked on it. Does it know how to edit the content of the text box? Okay, cool. It's choosing a font even, which is nice. It's good. It says it's going to choose impact. Let's see if it chooses impact. Selected impact, increased the font size, and now it's changing the color to white. And this is making me think that it would be awesome if Replit added the ability to skip a step in the test. So it's clearly getting stuck on this. It's really not that important that it changes the color of the text right now. It would be cool if we could just get it to skip past one task that it's working on. Okay, it got the color, but now it seems to be stuck adding some text. Okay, it has exported the image, but it seems to have basically moved the white text into the white area of the canvas, so we can't actually see it anymore. It hasn't resized the main image to fill the full space. It seems to be stuck on the export. This could actually just be a factor of the computer use thing, and it's trying to test the image download and it doesn't have the information that it's downloading something. I don't know. But I think I'm going to skip the test now because we've seen it go through the steps that we asked for. Obviously didn't complete all the steps perfectly, but I think we've seen enough to get an idea for how this app testing feature works. See the replay here, which I think is a really nice feature for understanding what happened during the test. And just for an indication, that was 15 minutes of the testing flow and work, and it was $1.46 not using the high power model. So if you're worried about this test running for a long time, it doesn't seem to be billing up based on minutes or anything like that. It still seems to be based on work, which I think is good. Okay, so if I want to use an image of myself, then I'm going to need to use probably a different image model to keep things a bit more consistent, because this probably isn't going to cut it for the YouTube thumbnails that we're creating. So I'm going to try and ask Agent to integrate a step which is going to use Ideogram's character reference to try and keep an image that I upload of myself a bit more consistent and the ability to have the face in different poses. So I'm going to copy their developer docs. So I've switched the edit image functionality to use Ideogram's API instead. Let's test this out with an image of myself and see if we get a better result. The accuracy is much better in this one, much closer to the original image. I've noticed that there's no actual settings that are going to let us bring to front or move backwards a layer. So we need to add that now. So I've just asked Agent to please add those controls. So let's test it out with this. Let's send it to the back. a layer. Nice. Remember, I can also generate new elements using the GPT image 1 functionality. So let's say, and these can now be added on top of the existing images and elements on the canvas. So here we go. Move this here. So next steps would be to improve the text editing and just in general, a lot of these small things about how the canvas editor works and how to position things. It could all be a lot cleaner. But in general, I think we have the foundations for what could be quite a useful tool. Time to review this build and compare Agent v3 to the existing or to the older v2 model. So now the $1 million question, how much did we spend on this app? We can see from this breakdown, we spent $44.87 on this thumbnail generator. If I look through the history of checkpoints, I can see that the big culprits are when I'm using the high power model. So for example, this request when I was trying to solve some of the Google Cloud bucket storage permission issues, I just asked it to try and solve it quickly using the high power model. And that was probably a mistake. That request alone cost $7.52. And to be honest, I found that using a clear prompt and identifying a specific issue that you want it to work on, and if you have a bit more time and patience, then you actually probably don't need to use the high power model unless you really get stuck. So I was using the high power model quite a lot just to try and speed up the production of this video. So I would say about 20 of the $44 went into just kind of rushing with the high power model. And a more accurate reflection of building something like this app is probably closer to $25 to $30 in credits. Of course, if you are smarter with your prompts and better at building it, then you could obviously do that for much cheaper. Overall, I would say that V3 is a much more thorough model. So it takes a bit longer with each message, and you can see that it's really going through several steps with each new request and message, going through these architect thinking steps, creating its own task list. And in general, I would just describe it as being a lot more thorough than V2, which means you get a lot more work done per message. And I think it picks up on a lot of little things which V2 didn't always fix. App testing is a really cool feature with this new autonomy. But in general, I found that if I am sitting here, building it, adding requests, and noticing things in my app that I want to fix, app testing is probably not the fastest way for me to do this. Instead, it's going to be much more useful for longer tests and tasks that are done asynchronously. So if I had a list of things that I wanted to test or check in my app, and I wanted to just jot them all down, maybe a list of 10, 15 things that I wanted to polish up and fix before I shared this with someone, that would be a great use case for switching on app testing and max autonomy and just letting it run for an hour through all of those little fixes and tests. If it gets stuck or if it clicks and does silly things, that's fine because you're not waiting for it. It was only while I was testing this and trying to film this video that it was a bit frustrating to see it getting stuck on very obvious things, which just means that this tool should be used in a certain way. If you're sitting here watching it click through your app, that's probably not the right time to be using app testing. All in all though, we've built from scratch a tool that lets me describe a thumbnail or a background or a main image. We switched over to using Ideogram for their character reference features, which is much more accurate than using GPT image, but we're still sticking with GPT image for creating these little additional icons and elements to add to our thumbnail. We have the ability to add text and shapes, which I want to build out a bit more. And then I can export the whole thing as one YouTube thumbnail ready to go with one click. So I think building it with Agent v3, especially using the app theme for keeping these designs consistent, that's something that I used to spend a lot of time working with Agent to update each button and make sure that it all looks consistent. Using app themes is something I would strongly recommend. It just makes this whole process a lot better and a lot simpler. And I would say that the app testing and autonomy features are a really cool thing that I want to explore more with setting it some asynchronous tasks to improve my app over time. But if you are sitting here building, again, I would just recommend that you switch that off and use the preview tab to do your own testing and go back and forth with Agent. V3 is still going to be much more thorough in making changes for each new request. And so the app testing feature isn't actually necessary to have on at all times. I hope you found that useful. If you are building with Replit or you're just getting into vibe coding, Check out replestack.com, where I'm sharing a lot of mini courses, prompts, and tutorials to help you build real products and businesses on top of Replit. You'll find new resources there every week. Just follow the link below or subscribe to this channel to get updated on new tutorials and videos like this. Thanks for watching.